Hey there, Evinrude fans. Day 2 of putting this engine back together. This is our 2000 model, 60 degree, 150 horsepower. It's Johnson or Evinrude, I forget which one. Really doesn't matter. They're both the same. And well, in this particular model. And what I've done here is I've come along, and this is obviously the crankcase. Come along and we've cleaned everything off of here. We've cleaned all of these seal mating surfaces, every bit of it, taken and cleaned, deglazed all of it. We double checked, make sure that because I had a damaged portion here, double checked to make sure that because that's where the rod cap tapped that. Double checked to make sure that that wasn't leaking and that wasn't going to be an issue. Everything's clean in here. I mean, I come in here with metal picks and clean out the insides of. This is where your lower bearing rides, and then you've got a lower seal housing that rides in here. We've got to make sure all these edges are cleaned out. Make sure everything is basically spotless in there. For the last step, what I do is I take my sanding block and I create because this cap that goes on here. It mates up to this. It doesn't use a gasket, it uses an anaerobic sealer. And basically what an anaerobic sealer is it stays liquid until the point in its lifespan that it is exposed to no oxygen, hence the term anaerobic, without oxygen. I make a crosshatch on this surface. I'll go this way, and then I'll come back and I'll go this way with my sanding block. And I do that on both sides of the cap over there. And what that does is it puts X's in here, and it helps to ensure that you're not going to lose seal. If you go straight this way, you might have little tiny grooves in there that it could blow out straight that way. If you go straight this way with it, it could blow out that way. It's not likely, but it's just a little, just something extra that I like to do, to even if it just makes me feel better in my head. Then that's what I do, because with the X pattern on here, the crosshatch, it just to me it seems like it's going to make a better seal. We've cleaned our crankshaft off. We've removed our bearings, cleaned underneath there. You can see what this surface looks like. You can see what, well, it's still got some grease on it in there, but you can see what all these surfaces look like. Excuse me. These are all spotless. We took our sand cloth, we cut it, tore it into little strips like this. We get inside the seal ring portion, we clean all that off. We deglaze that, all that. Tested our lower main bearing, give it a spin. It sounds good. Cleaned out any sealer or anything that may have been along this lip down here. And this thing is pretty close to ready to install. This is our lower seal housing that I was telling you about before, that fits into it fits in with this little key. It goes straight that way. It fits in down here like that. So we've cleaned out everything in here. We put a new O-ring on there. I have not put a new seal on it yet. The new seal is right here, but I need my vise to do that. So I'm waiting until I'm done with the crankshaft. We have taken all of our seal rings on our piece of glass, cleaned all them, deglazed them, made sure that they're all nice and clean. And let's see. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put grease, quite a bit of grease, because you do not want these seal rings falling out while you're installing this crankshaft. So I put quite a bit of grease inside each one of these seal ring grooves. I'll put the seal rings on. I'll orient them all facing upward. Some motors, older cross flows, or some of them that you alternate the open portion of the ring, this portion here. Some will face up, some will face down, and alternate all the way down. This particular motor, they all face up. So I'm going to get all these. I'm going to grease, put grease in this hole. Get all these seal rings on. Get them ready to install. we're ready for the crankshaft install. Once I get all those on there, I'm going to pull the crankshaft off of here. I'm going to install this new seal in here. I've got a new seal. This is our upper main seal. I'm going to put the new upper main seal on the crankshaft, and then we're going to drop the crankshaft into place. So I'm going to go ahead and get this done, and I will be back in just 1 second. We'll continue on with our build. Okay, getting ready to install our crankshaft now. One thing I want to point out to you guys is there's dowels in here, 3 dowels, and they intersect with this race right here, this bearing race. There's a hole in each one of these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to orient this dowel onto the bottom. When I do that, I'm going to make a mark with the magic marker on the top, so I'll know when this actual race, or this actual hole, is close to being centered on the bottom. Then I'm going to paint the inside of this with gasket sealer. I'm going to paint this inside of this with gasket sealer as well. And what that does is, well, it puts a gasket sealer where we need it, and then once we go to put the cap on, I'll put gasket sealer here, and I'll put gasket sealer down here. That gasket sealer is just to seal this this bearing, or this lower main seal housing here, and this upper main seal housing. That's all that we're using gasket sealer on. The rest of this gets gel sealed. And I'm going to give you one other tip here. I'm going to lay this cap on top of the crankcase, and once I do that, I am going to take a magic marker and I'm going to trace this line out all the way around. That way I'll know, because you can see all these bolt holes. Well, this thing goes like this. As you can see, it kind of undulates back and forth there. So it's hard to know exactly where you can put your gel seal and where you can't, and you don't know how close to the seal ring portion to get. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put my cap on there, I'm going to mark this out, I'm going to lay my drive shaft into place, or my crankshaft into place, and then mark 180 degrees off the dowels on the races for my main bearings, and then we're going to put it into place. I just wanted to give you guys a close-up look at this before we do it, because the camera's going to be sitting back over here when I actually go about it, and you won't be able to have that good of a view on it. Anyway, I'll get back in a second. Okay, as I said, we're going to put our cap on top, line up our main holes, line up our flange holes, and take a magic marker and we're going to mark out where the flange on the cap meets the crankcase. Now, before we put our gel seal on, we're going to clean this with alcohol. So some of this is not going to survive the alcohol cleaning, but a lot of it will, and that'll give you a good indication on where your gel seal needs to be. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to lay our crankshaft into position. I'm going to start with our gasket sealer this portion here. It's important not to get it up onto the actual mating surface of the cap. Okay, we got that done. And remember, there's a tab on the bottom of your lower main. And that tab goes down, faces down toward the rear portion of the motor. Pretty close to being seated now. I can spin these bearings. Everything's sitting above the dowels. We'll put all of our seal rings in place with the gaps facing up. Then I'm going to take my magic marker. I'm going to mark each one of these bearings. I'm going to mark the sides of it. And I'm going to spin it upside down. And once those sides are equidistant, side marks are equidistant from the actual block portion, I'm going to put a dot on here, and you're going to have, it's a kind of a messy deal, you know, oil trying to get all over your marker, and it makes it not want to work, but marks there, spin this over, the oil off the top, the marks on the side, we get those equidistant from the case, put a dot there, and then do this again, one last time here. Okay. Now we have a good idea where our dowel holes are in our crankshaft. So now we'll go push down on it a little bit, get her into place a little bit, and then you're going to want to have the lower portion in, and then pick up on this a little bit so you can spin it. And as you spin it, you will feel it bumping over the dowel. And then you'll feel it stop spinning when it goes into the actual dowel. And you got to work from one direction out and working from the bottom up. It doesn't feel like I'm down in far enough. It feels like it's in. That one, you heard the click, that was that one going in. And there's a click on that one. Okay, that's it. Okay, now, one thing you're gonna run into is all the grease that you used to hold your seal rings into place. That grease is going to want to drag your seal rings around as you rotate the crankshaft. So now we must get we got to get that grease to where it's not so thick. And how I do that is I take my oiler Because what'll happen is every time you make a revolution with your crank, it'll drag the seal ring with it over there. So you want that to stop happening. So what I do is I begin oiling that space in your seal ring. And I'll work it back and forth. As you do this, the viscosity of your grease will decrease, and the seal rings will begin to spin freely on the crankshaft seal portions. Now this is going to take a little while to accomplish, so I'm not going to bore you guys while I sit here and oil this thing for 15 minutes and get these rings to spin and everything to flow nicely with this crankshaft. So I'm going to go ahead and get off camera here for a minute. I'm going to keep oiling these. I'm going to keep rotating this crankshaft until it moves freely, and these seal rings spin freely on it. It's going to take me a few minutes, but this process takes a lot of time. So talk to you in a minute. Okay, Evinrude fans. I have got these all lubricated to where I can freely spin this drive shaft, and the seal rings are sitting still. That's what we were trying to accomplish. Now I'm going to get out a special tool I made that's going to 2 bolts in here and a piece of aluminum across here that holds this drive shaft into place. While that way I can flip it over and start installing pistons. So I'm going to get that tool out and get it into place, and then once I have it into place, I'll show you that. Then we'll spin it over and I'll show you how we put a piston in. Alrighty. Okay, Evinrude fans, I've got my crankshaft restraint in place here. Basically what this is I made all these. I just got this little kit. These are for different horsepowers. This might be for a 70 or a 50 horsepower, and then for like a 10 or a 15 horsepower, I got one. The 60-degree motors require this in your V6 and your V4. The crossflow and the 90-degree, they've got the lower main and the upper main seal and bearing housing have actual bolt end to the block, and that'll hold your crankshaft in place. So this is just a little larger version of this one. Just something I made to hold my crankshaft in place while so I can flip the block over and start installing pistons. Now once you got your crankshaft into place, and once you've got these seals to where they're lubricated enough to where that they're not going to spin when you spin the crankshaft, you want to spin the crankshaft and make sure that there's no gallops. Make sure that it's a very smooth revolution, that you don't feel any knots or you don't feel it hitting anything. I got this little guy that I made out of end of a drive shaft, and I don't know what this was, but I welded this thing together and made this neat little tool where I can put it in here and spin my crankshaft, little cranky thing. So anyway, well, looks like one of my seal rings did move on me. I'll lubricate that guy a little bit more, but it seems like they're sticking in place very well. So anyhow, now we're going to spin the block over, and we're going to start installing pistons. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, and I'll start with the port side of the motor. I needed to buy another piston. There's one of my pistons. I did one of my 20 overs. I didn't approve of once I got it sandblasted, and so I'm gonna head and order another one of those. Hopefully it'll be here today, maybe tomorrow. But we're gonna go ahead and install our port side pistons and rod caps. So I'm gonna get off the camera here. I'm gonna get these pistons ready. I already showed you how to assemble a piston in our previous video, how to put the rod cap on there. What we'll do in this next one is I'll show you how, and it's pretty easy, how we put the rings on, how we get the pistons down into place. And this, you know, again, this is a lot of just my way of doing things. I followed the book for years and just come up with my own little tricks and you know, how it works easier for me. So I'm gonna get off camera here. I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of my port side pistons together, and we're gonna start putting pistons in here. So I'll talk to you in a minute. Okay, Evinrude fans, I've got my port side pistons all they're all ready to go. Got the wrist pins in them, and did all that double checking stuff that I told you about. You got to do that a million times, and just make sure, because you want to do this once, and that's it. You want to do it once. You want this thing to last 10, 15 years, 20 years, depending on how much you use it. And that's how I build these things here. I don't do you know, I don't do many high performance stuff. My own stuff, I, you know, a little bit. But what I do for customers is I build as closely to adhering to factory specs as possible, and everyone that I built one of these motors for has been very happy. So what we're going to do is we're going to start putting our pistons in. There is a special torquing sequence on rod caps, and I'm not going to get into the special torquing sequence on that. I will post another video on that, because it takes quite a while to explain the sequence. I'll go through the sequence while I'm on it here, but I'm not going to give away everything that I do in the middle of this, and that's the most important part. Well, one of the most important parts is rod cap alignment. So here we go. I got this piston here. This is we're going to put this in our, this will be the number 2 hole. I marked it 1 just because rod cap, once I put them, sometimes I'll drop 3 pistons in and I'll put the 3 rod caps on. I started to do that, but I'm going to do these each individually so I can show you guys how to go through this and how to work it through each piston. That way, if you do get a hang up, then you'll know exactly where the hang up comes from. And what I mean by a hang up is when you're rotating your crankshaft, if you feel anything that's not fluid in the motion, if you do these 1 piston at a time, torque them in 1 at a time, you'll know, well, first and second piston went in fine and everything was fine. I put that 3rd piston in and I started getting a hang up in there. So you'll know it's in that 3rd piston and that there might be something wrong in there. You know, I've gone through a couple different machine shops since I've been doing this, and I've had machine shops actually not completely bore a hole and have a little lip at the bottom of it, and sit there scratching my head for a while, wondering why that, you know, was going on, until I finally figured it out. There's you know, there's certain things that can cause that, but if you do end up with a hang up on your piston, then it's best to know which one it is versus having to go through all 3 of them. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start by we have this is one of our 20 overs. Well, I've got a cup of oil. I've got an oiling brush, which is just a toothbrush, obviously. I got my ring tool, and this is how we go about doing this. These rings The rings fit into a dowel, and you'll see, I'll rest this stuff. You'll see that how that, when that meets together, it's there's a semicircle there, kind of a half moon. Well, that's where your dowel goes. There is no top or bottom ring on this particular type of motor. Sometimes there's going to be a top and a bottom ring, and you'll notice that the piston will have a square hole and then a tapered ring spot on it, and so you'll know immediately just by looking at it which ring goes in which spot. The way I do this is I'll get both my rings. You want to completely fill the ring portion of your piston with oil. Make sure that that's full all the way around. Once it is, then you will get one ring. You put the bottom one on first. You locate your dowel, see how your dowel is, that way you can orient your ring the way it needs to be. Put it in your ring expanding tool, drop it. Put it in your ring expanding tool, get it open, ready to go in there. There's one. Get it oriented in its dowel. See how it fits at the dowel there, and once you get it into the cylinder, it's going to be pressed together like that. Okay, we'll take our other ring, put it in our ring expander. Locate our dowel. Put it in there. Okay. Now you can see that one's in there like that. That one's in there like that. Okay. Now we will remove our rod cap. Of course, you get oil all over your hands, it makes things a little bit more difficult to grab. Okay. We got our rod cap removed. Place the rod cap in direct orientation as the piston's going. So it just takes some of the guesswork out of it, right? Now, our little oiler, cup of oil here. This is a very high quality outboard lubricant. This is XD100. You can use XD50. You can use XD30 for assembly. Make sure that your cylinder is thoroughly coated in the lubricant. Do the same to your piston. Thoroughly coat it. Okay. Now, take a screwdriver, center your rod. You'll notice your rod's got room to play back and forth. Center your rod in the piston. Make sure your rings are lined up on the dowel properly. And reach up underneath and help your rod work its way through the crankshaft. Be careful sticking your hands down inside of the of here, because there's some real sharp edges in there. And they'll lay you up sometimes. Okay, so now we are ready for our ring compressor. And I'm going to take our ring compressor and we will thoroughly lubricate the inside of our ring compressor. Once that is complete, double check one last time, make sure your ring is centered out on the dowel. Put your ring compressor over it and then move it to one side so you're touching the rings, and it'll hold them centered on your dowel. Tighten that as tight as you can get it. You'll hear that one last click. You'll know it's in there. Then we allow the ring compressor to contact the block. From this point, once the ring compressor has contacted the block, we go around, we make sure that the overlapping portions of the ring compressor are lined up perfectly with each other. And that way you know that it's perfectly round. Once you've got all that done, again, reach back up so you can guide your rod, guide it through into the crankshaft portion. Take your wooden portion of your hammer. And that's it. We now have a piston installed into our block. We'll rotate our crankshaft to where the crank pin is furthest away from the piston as possible. We're going to push our piston all the way down into there. Then make sure your piston doesn't fall out when you roll. Wrong way. Okay. Once your rod cap's facing you, you want to make sure that the rod cap is perfectly straight, parallel with your seal rings. So sometimes the piston will twist in there while you're doing that, and it'll make it out of truth. So I just work it up and down a couple times, and then get it up. Make sure it's perfectly lined up with the seal rings, the rod cap, or the rod cap mating surface there. Then we will take our bearings, lay the bearing down in there like that, totally submerged in oil. Put our bearing in its spot on the crankshaft. Do the same thing with your other half. Put the bearing into place. Then we know that the dot on our rod cap faces up, because the rest of the orientation, the way that works is this little dot right there will face up. Put the rod cap on. Take each rod cap screw, dip it in lubricant. And then we're going to tighten these finger tight. As we're doing this, we're going to observe the split portion on the rod cap and make sure that everything's lining up perfectly as it goes down in there. Some other manufacturers don't use rod cap alignment fixtures. We use a rod cap alignment fixture on a lot of these on all the newer Evinrude motors. So once you got that into place, that is the demonstration on one piston. You're going to go throughout the motor and you're going to do all the rest of the pistons that exact way. And then I'm going to go ahead and go through my rod cap alignment. And basically what you do is, or what is done is, you torque this to a specific setting. You get the rod cap alignment fixture. Okay. Lubricate your rod cap alignment fixture. Put your rod cap alignment fixture into place. Then you torque this to a specific setting. Then there's a very specific torque procedure that you go through. Torquing the rod cap down, you remove your rod cap. You remove your rod cap alignment fixture, and you work your way on down the motor. Once I get this one thoroughly torqued down, I'm going to insert my crankshaft tool, and I'm going to spin it through. And we're going to see if there's any hang-ups in it. If there's any hang-ups in it, then I've got to figure out why there is a hang-up. So, okay, that is how to insert a piston. I'm going to go ahead and do my rod cap alignment. I'm going to put the rest of these pistons in the motor, and then I'm going to show you how we put the cap on, meaning the rest of the other portion of our crankcase. Alrighty, Evinrude fans, Gulf Marine fans,